McCleary, which refers to the 2012 State Supreme Court K-12 funding decision, tops lawmakers' lists this session to resolve. So tell us, where is the legislature in implementing a comprehensive solution to the underfunding of schools?
You know, there's been a couple of bills that have been introduced this last session that have just gotten hearings. The Senate version, which actually is a fully funded plan, was passed out of the Senate and is over now here in the House to be considered, where it has been sitting in committee the last several days, and we're hoping that we'll see the House get a chance to vote on that bill. The House Democrats introduced a bill just recently also. The key difference between the two wasn't so much in the policy as it was in the funding aspect of it. While there are many things within the Democrat bill that I like with respect to their policy, they show no revenue to pay for it. They show how much it's going to cost, anywhere from $6.5 to $8 billion, and we've seen about $9 billion in tax proposals in separate pieces of legislation that are sitting in committees waiting to see how that goes over. But at this stage of the game, the only game in town that is actually a funded education plan is the Senate Majority Coalition bill that came out about a week and a half ago. You know, it's one thing to talk about what you want to do, it's another thing to also explain exactly how you're going to fund it. In this stage of the game, we've not seen yet the Democrat House plan as being a funded product.
Tell us the highlights of the Senate Republican plan.
Well, let's just start right out of the chutes. You know, one of the things that McCleary is talking about is that we need to not only put more money into our education system, but there's also several reforms that we have to put in there. What do the reforms mean? Bottom line, it's getting more money to the classroom. Today, we see a very small percentage of our overall budget actually making it to the classroom. Much of it gets caught up in middle management, administration, and we end up starving out the classroom. What is the classroom? Let's define that for a second. It's not just the teachers' salaries, it's not just the curriculum, it's also the building, the maintenance costs, the rest of our staff that's there. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're not just looking at one group benefiting from education, but our first priority is what's going to give us the best outcome for these students. The Senate plan, a biggie is retention of teachers. Right now, our average teacher salary, a starting salary of teachers is about $37,500 per year, plus benefits, but that's the salary. Their plan actually increases the base salary to $45,000 a year. That is a massive increase, largest increase we've ever seen in any staff person that works for the state. And then on top of that, it gives subsequent salary increases proportionately to all the levels up above that as well.
There seems to be a problem across the state in varying levy rates, where some places that are more affluent are paying less for schools as opposed to others that are paying more.
You know, this is a problem that actually dates back to the late 1960s, and the courts have been talking about this for several years. And I'll give you an example. The Seattle School District pays a little over $1 per $1,000 value of their home or property in their levy, their education levy tax. Let's take and compare that to, let's say, a city like Pasco pays over $4 for the same valuation of their property over there. They're paying 4 times as much in Pasco as Seattle pays for the same $1,000 value, assessed value of their property. That's a big regressive difference there, you know, and if we've ever had a tax system that you could call regressive, it truly is our education levy tax. What we want to do is we want to take and have that being a flat tax. In other words, regardless of where you live, regardless of what the median income is and the value of your home are, that you're paying the same flat rate throughout the state of Washington. What it does is those areas that are currently paying about $4 or more, some are over $5 per thousand, their rates would be lowered substantially. Those that are paying, you know, in the $1 to $1.50 range per thousand, their rates would go up slightly. Then those dollars would be shared around the state, and at the end of the day, you actually end up with more money doing it that way, and it actually disperses and gives us the ability to increase the amount of money that we're putting into our school systems per pupil. It's something that's been very difficult conversation over the last 40 years. There's a reason why a lot of legislators have not taken this up over the last 40 years, but we truly believe it's something that has to be done, and the courts have made it a very specific focus for us as well.
Your district would actually benefit by this Senate Republican plan.
The facts are this, is that those most affluent, highest property values, highest median income, lowest unemployment districts we have right now pay by far the lowest tax rates. Compare that to districts like mine and other rural communities around the state of Washington. They're the highest unemployment, lowest median income. Their property values are but a small fraction, and they're paying several times higher. Let me compare that. The reality in my district is this. If I take one of my schools, say east of Monroe, Sultan area, and I compare it to a Seattle or Bellevue school district, maybe that house out there in Sultan's worth $250,000. I compare that to the $1 million house that's in the Seattle Bellevue area. At the end of the day, That property owner actually in Sultan is paying more money in the actual amount they pay for education than the person who's got the $1 million house in Seattle or Bellevue. That's a regressive tax system, and that's something we've got to change.
You were sharply critical earlier this week in a press conference of the House Democrats' plan. Can you tell us what are some of your major concerns?
My major concern is this, is that it's one thing to talk about the policy, and there are a lot of things about the policy of education that we can agree on, but it's the path by which we take to get there is what's critical. The current plan that the Senate has put out shows exactly how they're going to fund it. The critical part I'm having right now with the Democrat plan is they don't show how they're going to fund it. In my belief, and many of us down here believe, because this has happened for the last several years, is they will throw out there a plan and they'll say how much it's going to cost, but they can't even come up with the votes to fund the plan. That's a problem. You should not be negotiating something that you can't put up the votes for to prove that it can be passed in the first place. At this stage of the game, until the Democrats in the House can actually show that they've got the votes for all these billions of dollars in tax increases to do it, which the Senate plan, by the way, does not do. It does it within existing revenue sources, then we've got a problem down here. So I'm working with my colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle to encourage them that, hey, I'm willing to start negotiating with you and start working on a fix for this whole problem here. But you've got to put out a plan, not just in policy, but the money end of this too.
There are two competing proposals. What happens from here?
Well, at the end of the day, just like in previous years, based on the fact that the Senate's proved they can get theirs out of the Senate, the House has got to be able to pass its plan, funded, and then we start going and negotiating back and forth. My hope is that the House is going to be able to put out a product here shortly that is funded, and then we start negotiating with the Senate. And that's where we step in. We're a minority. I've always served in the minority, but our role is to try and help the two majority caucuses in the Senate and the House come to some kind of a conclusion that, number one, especially with respect to education, is going to be focusing on the best outcomes for these students, and it's going to protect the taxpayers in the process. Of course, we all want a world-class education system.
You and Representative John Koster are going to provide an ability for people to give input on this and a number of other issues as well during a telephone town hall meeting.
Telephone town halls are something I've been doing for years, and actually it's one of my favorite things to do. And on the screen, you're going to have access to the phone number you can dial in, the time, and everything else. And I would sure encourage folks, if you want to chime in with your thoughts on the things that we're dealing with down here in Olympia, and or if you want to bring us up to speed on some things that are going on back home that we need to be brought up on. It's an hour-long program. It's from 6 to 7 o'clock on February 21st in the evening. And you'll see again the numbers on your screen. Please dial in. You know, we're going to be calling out that night prior to 6 o'clock to tens of thousands of homes in the 39th district, encouraging people to participate. Historically, it's been a great program. We typically will have hundreds, and in some cases thousands of people on the line simultaneously. And you get a chance to hear from us, ask live questions, and hear the dialogue back and forth. It's a fun time. That's one of my favorite things to do.